Hello, I'm Bas Hamer, and today we'll be talking about the tutorials, the first tutorial about how you can work with existing data. And this is assuming that you are using the PossumLabs.DSL.English package as the base for your project. So let's take a quick look at our examples. Right now we are in the project for core 1 existing data, and this is the core version versus this is the English version instead of the core version. So what we have in here is a particular feature we want to verify. We want to have some existing data, two different objects. They should both be users, an admin and a guest, both of which should have a specified email and a password. The emails are admin at PossumLabs.com, or guest at PossumLabs.com, and then we have our passwords are super secret and password. So what we are going to take a look at is where does this data actually live when we want it to show up. And for this we have to go into the entities folder, and we can go to our existing.json, and here we find most of the data, right? So we have an array of different types, right? We have a type for user because both of these items are going to be users, and one of them is called admin and one of them is called guest, and then we specify the values. This one has the values of email is admin at PossumLabs.com, and password should come from environment variable. And then we have our guest object, which has our email of guest at PossumLabs.com, and password is password. So we see that the guest account already looks right, but the admin account actually uses an environment variable instead of the actual value that we'd expect to find. Now, the way that this works is we are actually setting a particular step which specifies the environment variable. All of these files in the English folder are the default files with the exception of this guy we added. And what we do here is we specify an environment variable of admin underscore password, and we set it to the right value. So this is how you can override values in your existing.json from the environment. It's built in, you don't have to turn anything on. Now, this data has to be mapped to a user object. The user lives in the entities folder, and over here we have a user object. It has indeed a password and an email, so that makes it work. We have a couple of additional fields on here that are not being used at this time, like ID and function, and we have a method called log format. Log format is part of the iEntity interface, and what this does, it provides a easy way for the entire framework to spit out log messages related to the variables, right? So you may find a log message in the future that will say something like key admin, and it will spit out the ID, which in this case is a randomly generated GUID. But you might say like, I want to give the login, or you might want to provide both the login and the password just for easy access. Again, login password is not secure. So what else is going on here? We have our repository. The repository doesn't do much. In this particular case, most of the functionality we need actually comes from the base class. The base class has the implementation behind it that makes it register with the interpreter. So when it comes to the variable resolution part of the application, there are a couple of important parts. You have a template manager, which manages the templates. You have an interpreter, which keeps track of all the different variables and resolves them and interprets them. And then you have the repositories. And the repositories are registered with the interpreter. And lastly, there's also the loading of the existing data, which is a different component. And this just looks for this existing.json. It will then talk to the interpreter, find out all the registered repositories, and leverages those repositories to load up the data. That's about it for this particular tutorial. And we're going to talk about creating new data in the next one, and then we'll cover some of the additional code that's over here in this particular class. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.